welcome back. And as I never tire of saying, thank you for joining on this ongoing journey of coping, responding, and transforming this fraught and challenging time in our lives. There is no question in my mind that these few moments together each week anchor my days and my ongoing experience of this time in a positive and productive way. I hope they do for you as well, perhaps with a theme or an idea or a point of view that you can carry into the week with you. This week, I am thinking about the fact that today is my very favorite day in the whole year. You're all wondering, what is this woman talking about? Today, we observe the shortest day of our year, as it is the winter solstice, which means that tomorrow we begin the turnaround of the year as each day becomes incrementally longer, as each day brings increasing light to the darkness of this season until we reach the summer solstice and the longest day of our year. In this respect, the Hanukkah lights provided us with inspiration in the midst of physical darkness and a promise of the light to come. This time of the year, then, is a time of waiting, of preparing, of anticipating, and of discovering the possibilities inherent in darkness and a potentially creative, restorative, and even redemptive time. There are many approaches to and insights into darkness that render it a far more complex state than the seeming total blackness in which we describe it. As I was preparing for this meditation, I found that I am not the only one who celebrates the arrival of this day as a time of change, of hope, and of anticipation. I received so many positive comments this last week on the format of last week's meditation that I thought I might do a variation of that approach again, as the many and varied comments on the winter solstice in Jewish tradition deserve attention and acknowledgement. So let us take our meditative positions, sitting attentively and at ease, which is a lovely kind of contrast. Our feet on the floor, our hands in our laps, resting, possibly with palms upward. I'm already closing my eyes in anticipation of removing myself from the concerns and the presence of the world as it exists. This is a moment where we just go into our own places, go inside and breathe. This is our break to breathe. So let us take that first full, healing, wonderful breath. Oh, and let it out again. And let us do another. For some of us, it's the first time we have consciously just inhaled. We might hold it for a moment. We might feel the stillness inside of us and the fullness inside of us, as we think only about that breath and let go of everything else, all the thoughts that were occupying us before we began, all of the concerns about what is left to do today, tomorrow, the rest of this week, and beyond. Any lingering thoughts, but even any lingering, almost, attention focused on yesterday that is robbing us of enjoying this moment, or even of just being in this moment. We breathe in and we exhale. And with our next inhalation, I will share with you Rabbi Jessica Schimberg's suggestion. As we conclude the celebration of Hanukkah, meaning dedication, transitioning from nights of bright Hanukkah candles illuminating our windows to the darkness of the new moon and the winter solstice, consider dedicating some time to appreciating the darkness. For we know that the darkness of the womb gives life protection, sustenance, and time to grow. And it is the cold darkness of the ground that allows plant matter to rest and restore the energy needed to burst forth again each spring. It is in the darkness that we see the glorious array of stars. And it is beneath our soft, warm winter blankets, and even beneath the metaphorical blanket of sadness or depression, that we find within ourselves the permission to rest and renew ourselves, so we can once again bring our unique energy to the world. Let us breathe in for a moment the reality of darkness is a varied possibility. And let us for this moment breathe out our fears of that darkness, our desire to get rid of that place that suggests anxiety or sadness. Let us breathe in the courage with which to confront it, to look head on, especially if our eyes are closed, into that darkness, whatever it may represent for each of us. We are in a new Hebrew month of Tevet, which is followed by Shvat, the month when we celebrate the new year of the trees, as in Tu B'Shvat. This month of Tevet, the seeds are resting. We will celebrate the initiation of their energy rising again on Tu B'Shvat. Inside each one of us is potential, resting in darkness. We nurture there the creativity and imagination and instincts that arise within us and are birthed into the world. Let us breathe in that potential, that creativity that sometimes lies dormant, that engagement that sometimes seems so tenuous, that seems to reside somewhere in a dark place that we cannot always access. Let us look into those places with our next inhalation. And try to breathe out any aversion, any avoidance. It is all one. It is all part of us, of who we are and how we confront anything in our lives. Let us inhale access to the troubling parts of our days, of our nature, of our imaginations. And breathe out our avoidance, our shunning even. It's another whole realm to explore. take a few moments in these nights just after Hanukkah to gaze at the night sky. May you find in the darkness of the sky the distant stars and the sliver of waxing moon something that connects you to that which is beyond our daily concerns and our daily focus. May you find nourishment in the cold, dark nights of early Tevet, inspiration that transports you. May you find there a connection to that which is beyond our knowing, beyond our finitude. And may that darkness bring you hope, peace, and cultivation of potential. Let us breathe in again her thoughts, especially of the potential of darkness. There's a great deal that happens there in nature and in humanity. Let us breathe that in. And let us breathe out our assumptions that darkness cannot be a good place. From Rabbi Jonathan Slater, we learn that even in the cycle of our Torah readings, the mystical tradition identifies the weeks of the first 6 readings of the book of Exodus as a time when negative forces prevail in the world. These weeks extend through the Hebrew months of Tevet, Shvat, and into Adar. We can imagine why this might be. After all, everyone is cooped up inside and possibly stir crazy how we identify with that thought. The weather outside is harsh, physically difficult to deal with, and hazardous to health. So from the beginning of the Joseph story, where we have been for the last few weeks, through to the crossing of the sea, as we emerge from slavery in Egypt, we have been living in darkness. We will be living in darkness, inside and out. So even though we lit lights on Hanukkah, the weeks and months that follow are shadowed and dangerous, spiritually challenging, and potentially dispiriting. Yet the lights of Hanukkah are not forgotten. By the first week of Adar, just at the end of this beclouded period, we come to Moses' birthday, the 7th of Adar. The Midrash claims that when Moses was born, the house filled with light. This was the light of creation, the light hidden away in Torah to be revealed to us by Moses, and from which we can always find light. Although the light was hidden away for the righteous in the world to come, the Zohar, the mystical Bible, claims that were it not for this light, claims that if it were not for this light's constant radiance, the world could not exist. So when we light the Hanukkah lights, we are not only dispelling the darkness around us during that very dark week, we are bringing light into our hearts and souls to sustain us through a very dark time, so that we ultimately might taste freedom at Passover. And this is true not only at Hanukkah, but all year round. At any moment, we can turn inward to touch our own vitality, to sense the breath moving in the body, to recognize our capacity to perceive light even in darkness, and to know that redemption will come. So let us breathe in that inward knowledge that we can touch our own vitality. Let us sense the breath moving within our bodies as we inhale. As we exhale again, let us recognize our capacity to perceive light as we inhale. Even in the darkness of our exhalation, and to know, to believe, to have faith. Remember, faith is believing when we are in the midst of uncertainty, even to have faith, to know, and to know, even in darkness, that redemption will come. There is a poem by Rachel Barenblatt entitled In the Dark. Let us inhale, and I will share the first stanza with you. The mysterious, unnamed man is always a messenger sent to keep our story moving in the right direction. As you exhale, I will explain that this comes from the Torah portion in which Joseph is sent to find his brothers by an unnamed person who seems to magically appear. The mysterious unnamed man is always a messenger sent to keep our story moving in the right direction. The appropriate answer is always Hineni, here I am, ready for whatever pitch is up God's sleeve. Into the pit, out of the pit, from slavery into service. Descent always contains the seeds of ascent. Let us breathe that in. Descent always contains the seeds of ascent. Our tradition, our history is based on that idea. We have lived it so many times. He had to be enslaved in order to be accused, had to be accused in order to be imprisoned, had to be imprisoned in order to hear the dreams of the cupbearer and the baker, which surely God can interpret. Let us breathe in Joseph's story. Again, the quintessential Jewish story. He starts in the pit and is lifted up and descends into the pit again and is lifted up. Had to interpret dreams in order to sire Freud a few hundred generations down the ancestral line. But the cupbearer forgets, leaving Joseph in the dark as the longest night of the year threatens to swallow us whole. And yet, even as she writes that, we know that a turn is coming, which will take us in a different direction. There are a couple of more poems I would love to share with you. This one preceded by thoughts of Hannah Elizabeth Levin, who has a connection with yoga that some of you may find interesting. And I love her idea that the winter solstice is a sacred pause. Let us breathe in. This is a sacred pause. And out again. The moment where we experience the depth of darkness before we start making our way toward more light and eventually reach the summer solstice. This is known as Spanda, the yogic Ayurvedic principle of expansion and contraction. We can experience Spanda in our breath. The inhale is expansion. The exhale is contraction. We have done this. The winter solstice is like the pause at the bottom of the exhale before we start inhaling again. Pause, empty, ready for new energy. It is a time when we can plant seeds of intention for the coming solar year, simply by being still and noticing what we feel when we pause. Let us breathe in that expansion. Let us breathe out that constriction and pause for a sacred moment before we inhale again. By the same token, Hanukkah is a kind of spenda that allows us to expand with light into the darkness. The candles burning in the Hanukkah remind us of the coming of the light as the flames dance in the darkness. Each evening, we light candles at sundown. If we align with the dark of winter, we slow down. We get cozy and reacquainted with stillness. We rest and we dream bigger dreams. The expanse of the dark connects with the vastness of possibilities inside each of us. Can you feel it? What is the dark encouraging you to notice? Here is a lovely poem that speaks to the wisdom of the solstice from the Jewish tradition. Kislev, the month in which Hanukkah begins. Tevet is the month in which it ends. By Ellen Dannon. The seed planted in the dark, waiting in the dark of the year, the seed drawn to the light, the seed planted in the dark earth by our own hands, to be drawn from the earth by the light, which will return. To the planted and the planter, wait in despair in the dark for the return of the season of light. What if we think the light did not return? If we waited in the dark and at last despaired of light, we could almost forget in our winter's darkness that light will come again. We light the lights in the dark of the year to recall that all is in readiness, that we wait only for the warmth of light, that even in the absence of light, the work of creation is made ready. We seek to cherish the wisdom of the dark, welcome the coming light, and tend to our inner spanda, our inner expansiveness and constriction by balancing the doing with being, the activity with the stillness. And I would share one more short piece with you, because it comes again from our tradition. It is the story of Adam and the original creation. When Adam saw the day gradually diminishing, the very first day, he said, "Woe is me, perhaps because I sinned. The world around me is growing darker and darker and is about to return to chaos and confusion. And this is the death heaven has decreed for me." He then sat 8 days in fast and prayer. But when the winter solstice arrived and he saw the days getting gradually longer, he said, "Such is the way of the world," and proceeded to observe 8 days of festivity. The following years, he observed both the 8 days preceding and the 8 days following the solstice as days of festivity. In this story, the first human being is distressed over the decreasing light and believes it is a punishment. Only when he learns that the light will begin to grow again is he comforted. We too often feel sad or anxious when the light diminishes and are glad when it comes again. Adam's drama of fear and acceptance helps us to accept our own moments of not knowing. After the truth is revealed to him, Adam is able to celebrate before and after the solstice. This Jewish story of the winter solstice teaches us to honor darkness as well as light. By way of conclusion, a poem not from our tradition, but by Wendell Berry, To Know the Dark, in which he encourages us that the job of engaged spirituality is not to paper over the world with flowers and happy faces so that we can breathe a sigh of relief. Real spirituality, deep spirituality requires seeing reality, all of it, as it is, from its most luminous to its bleakest black and everything in between. To go in the dark with a light is to know the light. To know the dark, go dark, go without sight, and find that the dark too blooms and sings and is traveled by dark feet and dark wings. I wish you a comforting time in these next days, knowing that increasing light is coming every single day. But there are riches to be mined in this darkness as well. Let us look at those fully, attentively, mindfully. And let us have heart and take heart. The upswing of the year has just begun. Thank you. I look forward to exploring it together. God bless.